Hello everyone, welcome back. In this update, we're going to be talking about numerous storms, flooding rains, a fall front, and yes, even snow. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and the notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's get right to it. This is your September 15th update, and what we're looking at here in the expanded view, there's Nicholas that made landfall. It's an area of low pressure now into Louisiana. A lot of the convection is well to the east of center, and it's still going to be dumping flooding rains and a good chunk of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida panhandle over the coming days. There is Invest 96L that the hurricane hunters are going to be flying into later on this afternoon to see if they can find any type of low-level center with this feature, as this would continue kind of hugging up the East Coast. There's a cold front along here in the East Coast. That's going to bring all the severe weather that we're going to talk about today. But then our eyes turn well to the north, where you got some cold air building into much of Greenland, into Canada, as well as Alaska this morning. That's going to be diving south into next week and starting going to be impacting the Pacific Northwest and actually bring some much colder conditions, and yes, even snow for parts of the country. So let's take a look at this. Here's the overall jet streams. Right now, we're considered what they call a zonal flow. It's more or less a flat type pattern across the U.S. But next week, we're going to transition in what they call into a meridional type jet stream, where they get kind of a wavy type look to it. The jet stream buckles. It allows that colder air to filter down a little bit further off to the south, and that's the kind of pattern that we're going to go into next week. So let's delve into this. Here's the setup on the overall North American view currently right now for Wednesday, September the 15th. And you can definitely see that zonal type pattern really starting to take shape across the U.S. Some instabilities down south with Nicholas, but more or less the jet stream is well to the north. That's why much of the country is pretty much above average temperatures. And I think that's actually going to continue throughout the week. And as we transition into Monday of next week, we start to see that buckle and the jet stream. So underneath that buckle, we've got some colder temperatures to work with. You see the low pressure, about 997 millibars. That's going to drag some of that colder air down from Canada. And underneath that colder air, it's going to bring some rain, but it's also going to bring some snow into some of the higher elevations as we get into next week. And as we continue deeper into next week, you can see here we actually create what they call like a kind of a horseshoe type shape, and the overall pattern that, you know, the colder air continues to buckle down and filter just a little bit further off down to the south, and underneath that air, it's going to bring some rain showers and yes, even snow as it continues dropping a little bit further off to the south as we go into next week. But some of this colder air should reach the southern regions into Oklahoma as well as Texas by the middle of next week. So let's zoom in for today, because we got a lot to talk about for today as far as severe weather is concerned. Here's the area of low pressure with Nicholas. Unfortunately, New Orleans had a record rainfall yesterday, and it continues to dump very heavy rain, essentially from Lake Charles all the way into Houma, into New Orleans, into Biloxi, going into the Florida panhandle. So they get inundated with more flooding waves and waves of rain from Nicholas. There's the instability to the north ahead of that cold front. That's the severe weather that's going to be flying later on today into parts of the mid-Atlantic states as well to the northeast. Back behind it, there's not much happening with clearer skies, warmer temperatures, and they're just kind of waiting for that cold front to come down from the north. So let's zoom into this, because there's a lot of instability in the atmosphere. Some of these areas could see their first, say, you know, tornado warning and of the season in some of these areas, because they're expecting possibly isolated tornadoes well to the north in areas that really don't see that much activity. So yes, things could get really start to be bumpy even in the tornado parameters, these aren't extreme by any measure. But still, these areas that pop in 2 to 3, upwards to 4s, about the middle of the range of the index here, is definitely concerning. That is a possibility you could see an isolated tornado in this region today. So if we zoom into the CAPE values, which stands for your convective available potential energy in the atmosphere, there's a lot of juice to work with. It as that makes that clash into later on this afternoon. I think things get going probably after around the noontime hour. And then as we go deeper into the heat of the day, into that 4 or 5 o'clock, going into the early evening hours, things could get really bumpy along the East Coast, or along the I-95 corridor, along into New England here. And we'll go over a lot of the Pacifics here. So let's talk about this. So here's the Storm Prediction Center, the latest update. They do have that good swath of a slight risk for severe weather, essentially stating from Pittsburgh, all the way from Pittsburgh, all the way up to Portland, Maine. So this is a good swath of very heavy activity. We're talking damaging winds, possibly up to 70 miles an hour. We're talking some large hail, maybe quarter size or greater at times, potentially. And then we have that isolated tornado threat is definitely not out of the question. So things are going to starting to get bumpy. Not nearly as unstable down here into the Ohio Valley, but still you're going to be seeing some formidable storms to be contending with later on this afternoon. Yes, down to the south, there's always that possibility where you could things could have like a quick spin up, and with a low pressure, east of center here. So yes, there is still a possibility of having a quick tornado type spin up. In this type of environment. So yes, there's your tornado threat later on the day, and it's really kind of rare to see a 5% chance of a possible tornado way up here in this region into Vermont, New Hampshire, going into portions of Maine. They just don't see that type of activity in this area of the country. Yeah, like I mentioned, some of these areas could see their first tornado warning possibly of the season, of the entire year. So yes, down to the south, yes, you could see an isolated spin up in a tornado later on this afternoon. So let's zoom into this. Here's your 3 o'clock, say, radar view of things really can start getting cranking here on the 3K NAM. Instability in upstate New York into portions of Pittsburgh. You're going to start seeing that activity as it continues diving off into the New Jersey area. Getting into Connecticut, possibly even to Massachusetts, getting into that area of the country. As this continues moving into Vermont and to New Hampshire, then northern parts of Maine, all the instabilities down south with Nicholas, you just kind of get some waves and waves and waves of rain. There's NVEST 96L that's trying to get its act together off the southeast coast. And as we continue during the day and into the overnight hours, that you're talking possibly at dusk here, 8 o'clock time frame, yes, we could be looking at some unstable air. And as that continues pushing off, straight line winds, a squall line could start to set up. Maybe we transition away from a tornado threat. We transition into more of a kind of a damaging wind threat. So that 60 upwards to 70 miles an hour, and some of those stronger isolated severe thunderstorms are not out of the question in this region, as things could get bumpy in a big way as we continue into the nighttime hours. And this will actually continue pushing off the East Coast as we get into after the midnight hour. So let's zoom into the actual radar, what it would look like for the next 18 hours. And this pushes to about 11 o'clock. And you can see all the instability here is east of center. I mean, the center right now is technically around right over Lake Charles. But a lot of the instability and the heavier rains, the heaviest rains are well east of the center, where these deeper reds will drop, unfortunately, into Houma and to New Orleans again. So possibly back-to-back record rainfall days in New Orleans, where they don't need any more rain whatsoever. A lot of the heavier rains will spread into, say, into the Florida Panhandle today. We could be picking up some good rains into Kentucky, into parts of Tennessee as well, into West Virginia. This will go up the East Coast into Pennsylvania and upstate New York. And then that's when things starting to get really active as far as severe weather goes later on today. And that's the same thing that you kind of dealt with last Wednesday, unfortunately, as well, with the remnants of Mindy. So, yeah, I mean, you've got the unstable air continues going into Thursday. So here's Thursday. There's Nicholas. It really didn't go anywhere. It's only moving about 60 miles an hour. It's not a tropical depression or anything like that. By then, it's just an area of low pressure. But the area of low pressure will just sit there and spin and just send in pokes and spokes of heavier rain, sporadic at times. And then as this continues up the coast, there's Invest 96L. The hurricane hunters will be out investigating and see if this is going to be a formidable storm. If it gets named, it's going to be Odette. There's a storm off Africa that's probably going to get named too. So which one gets named first? It's either Peter or Odette. So I think both of them actually gets named. I'm not too certain this actually even makes an impact to the East Coast. Yeah, right now I'm forecasting it gets named as a storm, but not make impact. Gets close to Cape Hatteras, but doesn't make actual official and impact from the East Coast. So because these cold fronts, if this one doesn't push it out, this one will. So back behind this one, as we go into Thursday, again, ahead of that cold front, we've got more unstable air kicking off into Minnesota, and that will get into portions of Wisconsin as we get deeper into the afternoon hours. There's the setup for the next 48 hours. This is a 48-hour time lapse of rainfalls. Again, portions of Louisiana get pounded with very heavy rain. A lot of those heavier rains go into the extreme southern parts of Mississippi and Alabama, into the Florida Panhandle, as I think, yes, that feature stays a little bit slightly off the East Coast, as you have all that instability along the East Coast with those. This is the first front. There's the second front. Back behind it, as we go into that Saturday time frame, the heat is on. The ridge is over the United States, well above average temperatures for a good chunk of the region, but we do have that colder air starting to take shape into Canada. That's actually going to push down. It's already in Alaska by then, but that's going to start creeping into portions of the Pacific Northwest with some welcomed rain, as well as some chilly, cooler temperatures, as well as we transition into Monday. There's that wave, that buckle in the jet stream that I showed you. That's going to bring all the cooler anomaly air. Underneath that, we've got rain showers, much needed rain showers all the way up into Northern California as well. And underneath those rain showers in some of the higher regions, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Yes, some snow could start to fly in some of these regions because it could be cold enough at times to have some of that colder air. The ridge continues to dominate for much of the Northeast, and I think that continues for the foreseeable future with this active time in the tropics that I think just continues. There's what it could potentially look like by Saturday with that Invest 96L, again hugging the coast, but I don't think it actually makes landfall on the East Coast. As we transition to those temperature anomalies, yes, there's some of that colder air continue to press down of that 10, 15 upwards to 20 degree below average air, well above average air ahead of that cold front from much of the central and eastern part of the U.S. We still got that instability down here in the south as the tropics kind of continue to remain active down there with that southerly flow. As we transition into that Wednesday and Thursday time frame of next week, 22nd, 23rd time frame, a lot of that colder air will continue pressing into the central U.S., down into Oklahoma, into Texas, getting into portions of Arkansas, Missouri, even in Louisiana by then, as the ridge will continue to be dominant over much of the Ohio Valley into the northeast. Underneath that, there's the snow. So yeah, you're talking all that snow into Greenland, into Canada, that's building. We're talking snow in Alaska, right? That helps to trigger some of that colder push and that snow to filter a little bit further south. So some of these areas, yes, in Idaho and Montana, Wyoming, portions of Colorado are going to probably see some of your first snowfall of the season next week. And then as we take a look at the precipitation, yes, there's the active weather down south from Nicholas out the southeast over waves and waves of rain over the coming days. There's that Invest 96L that probably going to remain safely offshore. And then these spokes of cold fronts that come across over the next several days, because this is the setup between now and the 22nd. So basically the next 7 days of your rain showers, where those heavier rains will fall. And there's the rain coming back for the Pacific Northwest with actually some pretty good rains. They're going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even into early next week. And yes, Northern California gets into the action as well. Unfortunately for Central and Southern California, not much happening. Unfortunately, as far as rain prospects into Nevada, into Utah, into Arizona, into New Mexico, even into Colorado, there's that colder air, but it's not much actual precipitation that's going to fall underneath those clouds. But yeah, it would continue to remain dry for much of the southwest as it taps into some of that energy. That cold front can bring some rain showers into Oklahoma and to parts of Texas, say from Dallas into the East Texas, with that a little bit more unstable air as that cold front will come in next week. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video and definitely leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.